There are moments in life when you realize peace is an illusion. Mine came on a Tuesday. I'd just moved into my new place, a tidy house in a quiet suburban neighborhood where the lawns are regulation short and the mailboxes all look like they were ordered from the same depressing catalog titled Middle Class Uniformity, Volume 3. The house wasn't huge, but it was mine. A small front yard, a patch of grass that didn't know what a weed was yet, and a driveway that sloped like it had commitment issues. Nothing fancy. What sold me on it was the little stretch of curb out front, public street, perfect for guests or when I didn't feel like doing the driveway tango. The first week was uneventful. I unpacked, met a couple of neighbors, waved at old people walking golden retrievers they clearly resented. Life was fine, peaceful even. Then came her. She moved in across the street, 3 houses down. Blonde bob, glossy Range Rover, an aura that screamed, "I'd like to speak to your manager's manager." Her name? Of course it was Karen. I don't make the rules. I just report the disasters. We had the standard way from a distance moment, but that was it. No banana bread. No awkward small talk about property taxes. Just a glance that said, "I've already judged your choice of porch furniture." I didn't think anything of it until the cones appeared. One morning, I walked out to find 3 bright orange traffic cones lined up neatly in front of my house. Not blocking my driveway. Not in front of her house. Mine. I paused. Blinked. Wondered if I'd missed a construction notice. Nope. No signs. No trucks. Just cones. Sitting there. Like little citrus-colored warnings of doom. So I moved them. Put them on the strip of grass between the sidewalk and the curb. That night, they were back. And this time, accompanied by a note under my windshield wiper. "This is not your parking space. Please be respectful. Some of us have been here a long time." I stared at the note for a moment, processing the sheer density of entitlement required to write it. Then I looked across the street. Karen was standing in her doorway, holding a mug like she was posing for a propaganda poster. She smiled. The kind of smile that says, "I will burn your soul with essential oils." The next day, cones again. A 4th one had joined the lineup. This one had reserved scrawled across it in what looked like eyeliner pencil. I parked in the spot anyway. That evening, I came home to find another note. This one laminated. "Please stop moving the cones. This space is for my guests. This is a friendly neighborhood. We all respect each other's needs." I was starting to suspect Karen's definition of friendly included territorial control and cone-based warfare. So I did the reasonable thing. I knocked on her door. She opened it like she'd been expecting a SWAT team. "Yes," she said, as if I'd interrupted her mid-sacrifice. "Hey, just wanted to check. What's with the cones? That's public street, right?" She smiled again. "God help me. It's just that I've always parked there. You moved in 4 days ago." "Well, yes, but I mean, I've always needed that spot." There it was. That special logic. The "I want it, therefore it's mine" clause. I nodded slowly. Cool. Just figured I'd ask." She tilted her head. "I really hope we can be neighborly about this." Spoiler, we couldn't. The next week was a game of suburban chicken. I'd move the cones. She'd move them back. I'd park there. She'd write a note. One day I came home to find her physically standing in the spot, arms crossed like she was guarding the Holy Grail. I waved. She didn't. I thought it would eventually fizzle out. That maybe she'd get bored. That maybe, just maybe, Karen would discover a new hobby, like crystals or therapy. But then she escalated. She called the police. Yep. I watched from my porch as she explained to a very confused officer that I was harassing her parking boundaries. The officer, bless his soul, explained patiently that this was a public street and that cones do not equal ownership. She insisted she had verbal agreements with past neighbors. The officer glanced at me, then back at her, then at the cones, then clearly questioned his career choices. In the end, she had to remove them, temporarily. But I knew it wasn't over. Because Karen doesn't lose. She just reloads. It was at this exact moment, while watching her drag her cones back inside like fallen soldiers, that inspiration struck. Not rage. Not revenge. Just opportunity. I remembered a conversation I'd had a few days ago with my old college buddy, Jason, high school music teacher, percussion coach. told me once he was desperate for a place to rehearse outside because their school gym was under renovation. At the time, I said, "Man, I hope you find a place." But now I had exactly the place, and a petty little war to win. The thing about playing defense against a Karen is that you'll never win. She doesn't follow rules. She creates them in her head and expects the world to respect her delusions. So instead, I chose offense. Calculated, legal, soul-shaking offense. The next day, I gave Jason a call. He picked up with the chaotic background noise of someone trying to get 30 teenagers to play the same note at the same time. "Hey," I said, "you still looking for a place to rehearse that drumline?" Jason groaned. "Desperately. The gym's closed, the field's swampy, and I've got a competition in 2 weeks." "What?" I smiled. "You still got that permit template you told me about?" By Tuesday, we had everything lined up. Jason had already gone through the trouble of drafting a generic city permit weeks ago. Just needed an address and a willing property owner. That was me now. Proud host of the Suburban Marching Mayhem Youth Percussion Ensemble, a very serious name we made up on the spot to sound official. The application was submitted, approved in a day, and laminated in triplicate because Jason doesn't mess around. Everything was scheduled for the following week. Daily rehearsals from 4 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Full compliance with local noise ordinances. Fully legal. Fully glorious. I even printed out a copy and taped it to my mailbox, just in case anyone had questions. Spoiler, someone did. The drums began on Monday. It started small. A few snares, light taps, kids warming up. Honestly kind of charming. Like a parade was getting ready, but politely. By 4:10 p.m., they were in full swing. The entire block shook to the beat of synchronized bass drums and a 14-year-old prodigy who could probably outsnare God. By 4:15, Karen's blinds snapped shut like angry eyelids. By 4:25, she was on the sidewalk, phone in hand, talking to someone very intensely and pointing in my general direction like she was directing an airstrike. She didn't come talk to me. Oh no. Karen doesn't do confrontation unless there's plausible deniability and a laminated list of violations involved. So she called the cops. Again, the officers showed up just before 5 p.m., looking about as thrilled as a man headed into a meeting called, "You violated my aura." I met them at the sidewalk with a smile and the laminated permit, which I handed over like it was a royal decree. "Everything's in order," I said. "Just helping the local kids prep for their regional competition." One of them, young guy, buzz cut, clearly regretting every life choice that led him here, glanced at the permit, nodded, and looked over at the drummers. "You're within the noise hours," he said. "This is good." Karen stormed over before he could finish. "This is harassment," she barked. "It's targeted harassment. He's doing this to get back at me." The cop turned to her. "Ma'am, he's got a permit. They're within city limits. There's nothing illegal happening here." "But he's doing it on purpose," she hissed. "This is my street." Now, I don't know what training the officer had gone through to keep a straight face, but he deserved a medal. "Ma'am, this is a public street, and it's his private property. You're free to file a noise complaint with the city, but I can't shut this down." He handed her a generic complaint form. I don't think she even looked at it, just stared at me like I'd personally declared war on her auditory system. I smiled again. "Would you like some earplugs? I have extras." She didn't answer, just stormed off muttering about teenage terrorists with drums. Tuesday and Wednesday were even better. The kids brought energy. The rhythms echoed through the cul-de-sac. One neighbor brought a lawn chair and started clapping along. Another grilled hot dogs and offered them to the band. Meanwhile, Karen printed out flyers. Actual, black and white flyers titled, "Say No to Noise. Reclaim Our Neighborhood." She taped them to mailboxes and fences. One even ended up under my welcome mat. I framed it. It's art now. Her little campaign didn't exactly go viral. I overheard Judy from 2 doors down say, "I'd rather hear drums than that woman complaining about them." Oof. By Thursday, Karen was spiraling. She was filming the rehearsals from behind her curtains, like she was prepping for a lawsuit. One of the kids waved at her mid-snare roll. She ducked. The HOA sent out a newsletter that politely reminded residents to respect lawful activities and avoid placing unauthorized items, like cones, on public property. I didn't write it, but I may have inspired it. As for me, I did nothing. Just sat on my porch, sipped lemonade, and enjoyed the rhythmic sound of petty justice. Friday came like a symphony of suburban satisfaction. By now, the drumline had hit its stride, literally. The kids had grown tighter, louder, and more confident. Jason added some brass to the mix. A couple of kids with trumpets showed up. There was even a glockenspiel, which I didn't realize was capable of psychological damage until I saw Karen's face when it chimed. At this point, the rehearsals weren't just tolerated by the neighbors, they were anticipated. Judy brought out lawn chairs for people to borrow. Bob set up a cooler of sodas and labeled it drum fuel. Someone brought cookies. Someone else brought their dog, who barked in rhythm. The whole street turned into a block party, and Karen was absolutely losing her mind. Around 4:30 p.m. that day, she tried to outmarch the band. No, I'm not exaggerating. Karen stepped onto her driveway in yoga pants and noise-canceling headphones, dragging a leaf blower behind her like it was a Gatling gun. She proceeded to turn it on and wave it back and forth at the street as if she could cancel out the drumline with sheer suburban spite. The kids barely noticed. Jason just nodded like he'd seen weirder. I nearly choked on a Capri Sun. When she realized the leaf blower wasn't accomplishing anything other than blowing mulch into her neighbor's roses, she stormed back inside. 5 minutes later, she re-emerged with a decibel meter. Where did she even get a decibel meter? Who was one of those just lying around? She started waving it at the band from across the street, taking dramatic readings like she was hosting CSI, HOA edition. Then she filmed the meter. Then herself. Then the sky for some reason. Someone shouted, "Are you live streaming this?" She screamed back, "This is a documentation for the authorities." Sure, Karen. Go ahead and tag the FBI. I'm sure they're dying to take on the case of too much trumpet in Sector 3. The next day, Saturday, Karen doubled down. She printed an emergency petition, handwritten in block letters, with the heading, "Stop the noise. Protect our peace." She went door to door, again, trying to collect signatures like she was rallying for war crimes tribunals. But this time, people didn't just say no. They laughed. Openly. Judy told her, "Honey, I raised 3 boys in the 90s. This is nothing." Bob offered to sign if she'd stop using her leaf blower at 7 a.m. on Sundays. The teenagers started a chant. One band, one street. It was the happiest I'd seen that neighborhood since I moved in. And Karen? Karen was becoming unhinged. Sunday, she tried HOA sabotage. She called an emergency meeting, which, as it turns out, she doesn't have the authority to do, and sent out an all-caps email with the subject line, "This affects you whether you hear it or not." Nobody showed up. Not even her husband, who at this point I assumed was either trapped in her basement or just living in the attic with snacks and regrets. She posted a Facebook rant in the neighborhood group that included the phrase, "tactical psychological aggression via percussion," and accused me of weaponizing community goodwill. Someone replied with a gif of a marching band spelling out "Nope." Meanwhile, I kept doing exactly nothing. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just watered my plants while kids pounded out Seven Nation Army in the background like it was the new national anthem of the block. Karen, on the other hand, was now standing outside daily, arms crossed, recording rehearsals like a war journalist in beige capris. I'm pretty sure she was trying to lip-read their drumline coach so she could quote him out of context in a noise complaint. Her final move of the weekend? She called the fire department. Yes, fire department. She claimed the rehearsals were a safety hazard and that the vibrations could disrupt underground gas lines. A crew actually showed up, probably out of morbid curiosity. They looked around, blinked at the sight of lawn chairs, lemonade, and a 16-year-old wailing on a snare like it owed him money, and then left. One of them took a cookie. That night, I stood on my porch as the final drum hit faded into the evening air. The neighborhood was glowing. Literally. Someone had put up fairy lights. Karen? She was back behind her blinds. Window cracked. Eyes peeking out like a prisoner watching the outside world go on without her. And me? I was already planning Monday. The final stretch. The last act. And I had one more move to play. Something refreshingly sweet. Tuesday, the final rehearsal. But that was my secret. Only Jason and I knew it was the last day. To the rest of the world, including a certain emotionally unstable neighbor, it was just another chapter in the percussion apocalypse. The kids were scheduled to show up at 4 p.m. sharp. I'd already iced down drinks for them, cleared the yard, and made sure the permit was freshly retaped to the mailbox in case today was the day Karen decided to try calling in the National Guard. And then, right around 3:47 p.m., she showed up. Not in full clipboard and threat mode. No cones. No flyers. No backup. Just Karen. Alone. Jaw tight. Eyes twitching. That haunted look of someone who's tried everything short of summoning HOA demons from a pentagram made of mulch. She walked up my driveway like it was made of broken glass. I put down my rake. Wasn't doing anything with it. But hey, it added dramatic flair. She stopped a few feet away, hands clenched. Can we talk? I raised an eyebrow. Sure. I can't take this anymore. The drums. The people. The chaos. You win. Okay. You win. Just, please can you make it stop? She said it. She actually said it. Not the words, I was wrong. She would rather choke on a cone. But this was her surrender. To the untrained eye, it looked like a polite request. To me, this was Dunkirk in yoga pants. I gave her a calm nod. No smirk. No gloating. That would ruin it. Okay, I'll wrap it up. She blinked. She wasn't sure whether to believe it or not, but she clung to it like it was the last pool float on the Titanic. She started turning to leave, shoulders still tense. And that's when I added. Also, the kids have been working really hard. Would be a nice gesture if someone brought out some lemonade after rehearsal. I'm sure they'd appreciate it. Boom. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just dropped casually, like it wasn't the social equivalent of a finishing move. Karen froze. You want me to bring them lemonade? I shrugged. You don't have to. Totally up to you. Just feels neighborly. She stared at me like I'd asked her to donate bone marrow to a marching band. There was a silence. The kind of silence you only hear right before a fire alarm. And then she nodded. Sharp. Angry. Humiliated. Fine. She walked away like she was holding back a scream that had been building for 6 days straight. 4 p.m., the final rehearsal began. The kids hit harder than ever. Pure fire. Drumsticks flashing like a synchronized attack. A snare roll so clean it could have peeled wallpaper. Neighbors clapped from their porches. Kids danced on the sidewalks. Someone brought a tiny flag and waved it like we'd just won the Revolutionary War. Karen didn't show her face. Not right away. But then, at 5:18 p.m., she returned, holding a tray, 2 large plastic pitchers, 12 cups, slices of lemon bobbing at the top, like little trophies of defeat. She walked slowly across the street. No eye contact, just cold fury and mild citrus. She placed the tray near the edge of the yard, like she was delivering evidence to a crime scene. Jason saw her and gave the most obnoxiously cheerful thank you known to man. The kids cheered. One of them said, Yo, this is baller. I nodded solemnly like we were baptizing them in holy lemonade. Karen didn't say a word. She turned and walked back across the street. Windows closed. Curtains drawn. The last beat faded just after 6:30 p.m. The kind of silence that settles like dust after a controlled demolition. The kids packed up their gear. Jason handed out fist bumps like a proud suburban drill sergeant. Neighbors waved, laughed, swapped numbers. The whole street buzzed like we'd just finished filming the last scene of a feel-good Netflix original. And across the street, Karen's windows were shut. Her porch light stayed off. Her Range Rover hadn't moved in 2 days. I stood there for a moment, watching the tail end of the Drumline caravan disappear down the street, their van rattling slightly like it still carried the spirit of Snares past. Jason clapped me on the back. Same time next year. I grinned. Let's give it a few months. I like to keep the suspense fresh. Over the next few days, things got weirdly quiet. Too quiet. Karen didn't reemerge. No new notes. No cones. No more sidewalk stakeouts with a decibel meter and the fury of 10,000 Pinterest boards. Even the HOA seemed confused. They sent out a bland, overly polite email thanking everyone for their community engagement and grace during temporary educational events. I translated that to, "Please stop emailing us about drums and psychological warfare, Karen." Then, on Saturday morning, I saw it. A moving truck, parked in front of Karen's house. Doors open. Men in matching shirts hauling out bins, lamps, and one aggressively beaded yoga ball. I blinked. Not a single neighbor helped. Not one casserole. No goodbyes. Just side eyes from across hedges and a few slow claps from behind mailboxes. She didn't look at me once. But I saw her, rushing between house and truck. Ponytail tight. Sunglasses on like she was going into witness protection. A woman who once tried to take over a curb, now unable to even glance at the street she tried to rule. By 2 p.m., she was gone. Just like that. Cones, notes, Range Rover, all vanished into thin air. I stood at the curb, my curb, iced tea in hand, breathing in the crisp, drama-free breeze of post-Karen air. And yeah, I may have left something in her mailbox. Just a small card. Plain white. No glitter. No flourish. Just this. Thanks for the lemonade. We'll always remember your contribution to community spirit. It's been a few weeks now. The spot in front of my house. Free and clear. The kids came in third place at their regional competition, by the way. Jason says they've never played tighter. He still calls me coach. I don't hate it. As for the street, peaceful. No more flyers. No decibel counters. No HOA hysteria. Just birds, wind, and the occasional nostalgic whistle of a snare roll in my head. And hey, if another Karen ever moves in, let's just say, I still have the permit. And the kids have learned a few new songs. Thank you for being with us. Please share in the comments whether you liked everything, and see you next time.